Wow, what a cluster that was. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing? We actually got the software to work after too much trouble. Sometimes computers will drive me nuts. Anyway, I apologize for skipping this show yesterday for the, again, 3 of you that were waiting to hear. Weekly, we do the show Eyes to See, Vision Beyond the Narrative, where we discuss politics and current events. And lately, in the last 4 or 5 shows, we've been discussing the murder of Charlie Kirk. And I was supposed to do this one yesterday, and I got to writing it, and it turned into something that was way more work than I expected. I don't even know if I'm finished yet, but it's good. The issue with yesterday was I was working all night on it, basically. So we didn't do the show. So I'm planning to do it today. And then all of a sudden I remembered the great debate was today. The great debate between Andrew Wilson. Oh, shit. It's still playing. And Candace Owens. And I watched about 2/3 of it. I was trying to get through to the end because apparently the end gets good. But I want to take it further. I want to take it in a different direction. So those of you that are interested in Charlie Kirk, welcome. My name is, what am I on this show? Waddy Watts. And I do multiple shows, so hopefully this one will pique your interest in politics, current events, and the ideas that I come up with over time. And you'll stick with me and subscribe and like the show. So what I do normally is write an essay, and then I read it, and then we talk about it. This essay is number 15, even though it's episode 24. We skipped a few. However, essay 15 is a banger. Now, again, I can't wait to watch the rest of the great debate and then all the feedback and fallout. I'm sure both sides are like, Candace destroyed him. Candace got destroyed. Both sides probably have their thing. And I don't want to say I'm sick of both sides. That's too easy. I'm sick of the simple tactics. Now, Andrew is a good arguer. Candace is a good arguer. And I really don't think they're getting very far in this so far. But we'll wait till we see. We'll comment on the next one. In the meantime, I came up with my own. Do you hear that humming? Is that my headphones or is that you? Terrible, terrible live streaming. Check. Cool. Now I'm going to hear that in my fucking headphones for the rest of my life. My cloud lifter. And this thing. No. All right, check. God, doggy, that is driving me nuts. Wow, just one thing after another. I'll tell you what, stick around to the end and I'll show you a little video about this cricket hunt I went on. And those of you that have been following me for a while understand the cricket hunting. But the cricket hunting's been gone for a long time, a couple of years. I haven't seen any crickets. But today we had a Taliban cricket join us and I got the footage. So stick around to the end and we'll show you that footage. Okay, I'm just going to have to deal with this. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. We'll try one more time. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Oh, we got it. Thank God. These are $500, $600 headphones. I've had them for years. I can't stand when shit doesn't work when you pay good money for it. Anyway, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, essay 15. America first, unless Israel I'm starting with a quote. It says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." That is from the Bible, Jesus speaking in John 12:24. It's hard to tell when a man dies whether his work dies with him. Most men leave behind only memories, photographs, a few stories, maybe some children who carry pieces of them forward. Their voice stops when their heart stops, but ever so rarely, death does something strange. A man will die, and whatever he was carrying, whatever he was working toward, will begin to spread farther than it could have while he was alive. Jesus used the idea of a grain of wheat falling into the earth in death because in that death, it is then allowed to bear much fruit. I should say because of that death. The verse was a foreshadowing of his own death. It's a very rare man who becomes greater in death than life. I could maybe think of some artists, some authors, but the principle remains interesting. Sometimes you don't fully understand what a man's life was until after he is gone. Jesus himself wrote nothing by his own hand. He held no office, commanded no army, built no earthly institution, and died publicly at the hands of political and religious authority. Yet his few piercing words changed the course of human civilization. John called him the Logos, the Word, and says that in the beginning the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made through him. The Word is a powerful core concept of reality. Christians say it was Jesus' conquering death and subsequent resurrection that changed the world. But whether you believe that or not, it's hard to argue either way that Jesus did not change the world. John might say that in his death, Jesus bared much fruit. What will the death of Charlie Kirk mean going forward? At first, the story was that it was his free speech and open debate that got him killed at the hands of some disgruntled leftists. The battle was then framed as the violent left against the right. The left-right battle conveniently keeps people busy bickering. But what if his death was destined to usher in a new era entirely outside the left-right dichotomy? While Charlie was alive, I thought I understood what he was. He was a conservative organizer, a political activist, a debater, a Trump supporter, the founder of TPUSA, Turning Point USA, and one of the most effective communicators the American right had ever seen. He could walk onto a college campus, stand underneath a little tent, and take questions from people who hated him for hours. He built an enormous organization and became especially influential among young conservatives. He was also, for most of his career, one of the most recognizable evangelical defenders of Israel. That particular Charlie fit comfortably inside the Republican coalition. America first and support Israel seemed to go hand in hand. But ironically, right before the end of his life, a friction appeared. Charlie first began warning against another American war in the Middle East. He resisted the growing pressure for regime change in Iran. He questioned whether intelligence claims being used to justify escalation should simply be trusted, pointing to the Iraq War previous. He opposed efforts that would punish Americans economically for boycotting Israel. Yes, those exist. He began complaining about the strange political rule that allowed conservatives to criticize nearly every nation and institution on earth, but treated criticism of Israeli policy as a crime. Reports of his private communications went even further, describing a Charlie furious about pressure from major pro-Israel donors, saying that he was being left with no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. The night before Charlie Kirk was murdered, according to people who say they received or saw his messages, Charlie wrote that he believed, quote, they were going to kill him. Apparently, he did not specify who they were. Perhaps he meant left-wing extremists. Perhaps he meant someone else. But one thing's for sure, a man who believed he was about to be killed and said as much, was dead the next day. Charlie had not publicly transformed into an enemy of Israel. That would be too simple, and as far as the available records show, inaccurate. He still spoke affectionately about Israel and had spent years defending it. Something more interesting appears to have been happening. He was beginning to separate support for Israel from obedience to the political machinery surrounding Israel. He was beginning to ask whether an American conservative could love Israel and still tell her no. Charlie spent the summer under mounting pressure from pro-Israel donors and activists. In August, he attended an allegedly contentious Hamptons gathering hosted by a Jewish mega-donor, Bill Ackman. Reports from one side described the meeting as an intervention in which Charlie was heavily pressured over his increasingly critical posture towards Israel, his refusal to distance himself from Tucker Carlson, and related disputes inside the conservative movement. The other side disagreed over whether it was a coercive intervention or simply a difficult but cordial discussion. By early September, whatever restraint Charlie had left was cracking. After losing another major donor because TPUSA refused to cancel Tucker Carlson, he privately wrote that Jewish donors were, quote, playing into all the stereotypes, and that he would not be bullied, and that they were, quote, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. Days later, he was dead. I have spent the last several episodes examining the problems with the criminal case and the danger of filling every unanswered space with whatever theory we might already prefer. Suspicion is not evidence simply because suspicion feels right. If Charlie's changing position on Israel had nothing to do whatsoever with his death, then eventually the evidence ought to show that. But refusing to manufacture certainty does not require pretending chronology is meaningless. A powerful conservative influencer began resisting yet another Middle Eastern war, complained about donor pressure connected to Israel, and appeared to be reconsidering one of the deepest political commitments of his life. Then he ends up dead, and would you know it, that Middle Eastern war with Israel commences. The way I see it, Charlie Kirk was a prophet. I'm not calling Charlie Kirk a prophet in the sense that Isaiah or Jeremiah was a prophet, receiving the word of God and speaking with divine authority. I mean something more ordinary and older in the word itself. A prophet professes. An authentic prophet professes truth. He speaks a claim of truth into the presence of people who do not want it spoken. Biblical prophets spend an astonishing amount of their time confronting authority. They confront kings, priests, rulers, wealthy men, and sometimes the entire nation standing behind them. The righteous prophet is not the man yelling accusations at his enemies. He is the man standing in the middle of his own institution, saying the things his friends do not want to hear. The prophet is a threat to all forms of power because he refuses the influence of that power and stands on truth. Nathan confronted King David over the orchestrated death of Uriah. Elijah confronted Ahab after Ahab and Jezebel promoted Baal worship. Jeremiah condemned Judah's kings, priests, and false prophets for corruption while they continued claiming God's protection. The biblical prophets were not always cheerleaders for Israel. They were often Israel's most severe critics. Covenant did not mean immunity. Being chosen by God did not mean every Israelite ruler was righteous. It meant Israel had been given more, and therefore would be held to a higher standard. That point seems almost completely lost in much of American evangelical Christianity today. For generations, millions of Christians in this country have been taught to move almost effortlessly from biblical Israel to the modern state of Israel, from the ancient Israelites to the modern Israelis. The Jewish people, they believe, are Israel. The modern country now called Israel is therefore biblical Israel restored. Supporting that modern state becomes a Christian duty, and criticism begins to feel spiritually dangerous. Politicians keenly understand the arrangement and use it to their advantage. Pastors repeat it. Donors reinforce it. Republican candidates learn quickly which answers are expected. But the Bible itself does not treat Israel that way. Israel rebelled over and over and over again. Israel worshipped idols. Israel corrupted its priesthood. Israel produced wicked kings. Israel persecuted prophets. Israel divided against itself. Jerusalem itself was repeatedly condemned by the very God whose name it carried. The fact that the Jews were chosen did not make them perfect or without sin. Some of Jesus' harshest words were directed not at prostitutes, tax collectors, or ordinary drunken sinners, but at religious authorities who claimed to righteously guard the things of God while corrupting them. He called the scribes and Pharisees hypocrites, blind guides, a brood of vipers, and a whitewashed tomb full of dead men's bones. The offense was not that they possessed Jewish blood. Jesus was Jewish. His mother was Jewish. His apostles were Jewish. The argument was about men possessing and proclaiming religious authority while betraying the God whose authority they claimed. I actually made this sentence bold, so pay attention, write it down. If Jesus walked into Jerusalem today and condemned the Israeli government, would American Christians accuse Jesus of anti-Semitism? That question gets even stranger once you begin looking at the history that many evangelicals were never taught. Recently, I listened to several long discussions by a preacher named Rich Tidwell, dealing with Edom, Ashkenazi Jewish history, and the phrase, quote, the synagogue of Satan. And for those of you watching Candace, you have seen also a mention of the synagogue of Satan that comes from Revelation, the book. Tidwell advances a provocative theory. He points back to Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and traces the biblical family through Shem towards Abraham. Abraham is Ishmael through Hagar, and Isaac through Sarah. Isaac then has twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau becomes Edom. Jacob becomes Israel. The conventional distinction is clear in Scripture. Ishmael is blessed by God and promised descendants, but the covenant only continues through Isaac. For those of you that don't know, Ishmael was Abraham's first son through his wife's maidservant's womb. And I don't know the exact story, but I think Sarah had something to do with it, Abraham's wife, because she wasn't able to bear children, and she didn't trust that God was going to bring the child and the promised child. And so she forced him to lie with his maidservant and had Ishmael. 13 years old Ishmael had a little brother, a little half-brother, I guess, that did come through Sarah. His name was Isaac. So Ishmael, 13 years older than Isaac, I believe. But Isaac, as Abraham's only legitimate son through Sarah, then has Esau and Jacob through Rebekah, twins, matter of fact. God telling Rebekah, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger. Centuries after Rebekah, the oracle Malachi, also a prophet. Oh wait, I wrote that. Who was the last prophet in a line of major and minor prophets in the Old Testament, writes, quote, the oracle of the word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. This is chapter 1. I have loved you, says the Lord, but you say, How have you loved us? Is not Esau Jacob's brother? Declares the Lord. Yet I have loved Jacob, but Esau I have hated. I have laid waste to his hill country and left his heritage to jackals of the desert. Boom. Apparently God was not pleased with Esau. And if you need to look more in that story, look for it. We don't need to get into it, but if you want to understand God's heart, understand the dichotomy between Jacob and Esau. Paul later writes in Romans, going on to say, quote, "For not all who are descended from Israel belong to Israel." That does not mean every descendant of Jacob is good and every descendant of Esau is evil. The line between good and evil still runs through every human heart. But it does mean that the Bible takes the separation of those family lines seriously. Edom later becomes a persistent adversary of Israel. Centuries pass, kingdoms rise and collapse, populations move, conquer, and intermarry. During the Hasmonean period, the Idumeans, associated historically with Edom, were incorporated into Judaism, brought into the fold, so to speak. By the time Jesus was born, Herod the Great sat on the throne of Judea as king of the Jews, even though his father's family was Idumean. According to Matthew, this same Herod heard that the actual king of the Jews had been born, and as a result ordered the slaughter of every male child 2 years old and under in the entire region that he reigned in and around Bethlehem. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph thankfully had escaped to Egypt. There's enough history here to make a man curious, but Tidwell goes much further. He argues that Edomite converts eventually became an important ancestral component of later Jewish populations and ultimately connects that idea to Revelation's reference to, quote, "the people of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not, but lie." He believes modern Ashkenazi Jewish identity has substantially inherited Edomite rather than Jacob Israelite lineage. Modern genetic research generally finds Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry to be a complicated mixture containing both substantial Middle Eastern and European ancestry. The claim that modern Ashkenazim, that's plural for Ashkenazi, are simply Edomites who stole the Israelite identity. That claim runs a little farther than evidence currently allows, but Tidwell raises a theological question that survives even if his genetic theory is incomplete. Who exactly is Israel? By Israeli, do we mean Jacob himself, whose name God changed to Israel? Do we mean each of his 12 sons and their descendants? The northern kingdom that retained the name Israel after the division? What about Judah? What about the Jewish population returning from Babylon, Judea under Roman occupation, the worldwide Jewish diaspora? Or is it merely a modern parliamentary nation state established in 1948? Again, who exactly is Israel? Modern Israel has elections, politics, or political parties, intelligence agencies, taxes, military doctrines, borders, lobbyists, and prime ministers. Benjamin Netanyahu is not King David. The Mossad is not the prophet Samuel. AIPAC is not the Sanhedrin. The Knesset is not the temple. No Christian doctrine I know of turns the foreign policy of a 21st century government into the will of God, merely because that government is in control of Jerusalem. The Bible should actually make Christians less susceptible to that confusion, not more. The story of Persia proves the point beautifully. Persia is not part of the Jacob, Esau, Ishmael family struggle in the way those branches are. The Persians, also known as the Iranians, are a different people. Yet Cyrus, a pagan Persian king, becomes one of the great instruments of God in the Old Testament. He defeats Babylon, allows the Jews to return, and permits the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Isaiah even calls this pagan ruler God's anointed for the work God intends him to accomplish. A Persian can serve God's purpose. An Israelite can rebel against it. A Pharaoh can enslave God's people and still become part of the machinery through which God displays his judgment and then delivers them. Ancestry does not eliminate a moral requirement. Political labels do not determine righteousness. That principle should be obvious enough to apply to modern Israel. Instead, American conservatives have built one enormous exception into nearly everything they claim to believe. We are suspicious of foreign influence, unless Israel. We oppose endless war, unless Israel. We oppose censorship and restrictions on political speech, unless Israel. We believe American politicians should serve American citizens first, unless Israel. The title of this essay is not America First, except Israel is bad. It is America First, unless Israel. This is what seems to be the contradiction that is increasingly tearing apart the right. A conservative can demand that Ukraine justify every American dollar it receives. He can question NATO. He can attack Saudi Arabia, China, Mexico, Germany, or France without anyone asking whether hatred lives in his heart. He can oppose sending weapons into a foreign conflict and call himself America First. However, Israel operates differently. Dozens of American states, 38 to be exact, have enacted laws, contracting requirements, investment restrictions, or executive policies aimed specifically at the participation in boycotts of Israel. These generally do not mean ordinary citizens can be jailed for merely criticizing Israel, as is sometimes claimed. The truth is stranger enough without any exaggeration. American governments have deliberately created a special public policy protection against certain economic boycotts of a foreign nation. But why? An American should be able to boycott China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, France, Canada, and Israel. His government does not need to agree with him. Americans have the First Amendment freedom of speech. However, political freedom becomes rather meaningless if it works only until a politically favored country is offended. The same contradiction becomes far more serious when we leave boycotting and start talking about war. Iraq cost Americans trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives, decades of consequences that are still unfolding. The Iraq War had many fathers. The Bush administration, post 9/11 fear, bad intelligence, American imperial ambition, neoconservative ideology, Republican and Democratic politicians, military planners, and an American public frightened enough to accept claims that eventually proved disastrously wrong. It would be dishonest to reduce Iraq to some statement that the Jews did it. Did I say ironic or dishonest? I should have said dishonest. But it would be equally dishonest to pretend that the pro-Israel strategic thinking played no role in the neocon foreign policy world pushing for Saddam Hussein's removal. Israeli leaders had obvious reasons to prefer a Middle East without Saddam. American neocons often saw Israel and American strategic interest as mutually reinforcing. Pro-Israel lobbying organizations operated inside the same Washington environment, and the deeper one digs into 9/11, the more Israeli fingerprints are found at the scene of the crime. Iran has now reopened that same wound. Iran is not innocent. The Islamic Republic has supported armed groups, threatened Israel, attacked Israel, crushed its own people, and spent decades establishing itself as an enemy of both Israel and the United States. Israel has genuine security interests concerning Iran. A man does not have to admire the Iranian regime to ask whether America's answer to Israel's security problems should be another American war. Charlie Kirk was asking that question before he died. And I wonder if that is the prophetic significance of Charlie's final months. Charlie did not come to the argument as an outsider, and that matters enormously. A lifelong anti-Zionist attacking Israel changes very few evangelical minds. But Charlie had spent years inside the sanctuary. He had defended Israel. He knew the arguments. He knew the donors. He knew the politicians. He knew the Christian language wrapped around the alliance. But then he started resisting. The prophet is most dangerous when he already knows the inside of the temple. Maybe Charlie had simply reached the contradiction earlier than millions of conservatives who followed him. Maybe he began discovering that you cannot permanently hold two absolute commitments when circumstances force them against each other. Israel first and America first can coexist comfortably when their interests are identical. The test comes when they are not. If an Israeli prime minister believes attacking Iran is necessary for Israel's survival, while an American president believes the resulting war would harm American citizens, there should be no theological puzzle about whose interest the American president was elected to defend. America. That should be the easiest answer in American politics. America first. Instead, saying it can suddenly require an explanation. That is why Charlie's death may ultimately accomplish something Charlie's life could not. Well, his life accomplished many things, many more than any normal human. I think his death may ultimately accomplish more. His final questions are escaping the political coalition that contained them. Conservatives are asking about Israel who never asked before. Christians are reconsidering whether modern Zionism and biblical faith are interchangeable. Younger Republicans increasingly refuse to treat criticism of Israeli policy as a moral defect. People are going back through Charlie's old shows and noticing that his position was moving. Now, none of that tells us exactly who murdered him. It does tell us that the grain did not remain where it fell. Charlie spent much of his career teaching young conservatives how to argue with the left. His final contribution may turn out to be considerably more uncomfortable. He may have taught them, almost accidentally, how to argue with their own side. Maybe that's what the prophet does. He doesn't tell the people what their enemies have done wrong. They already enjoy hearing that. He tells his own people where they have confused loyalty with truth. Charlie was beginning to ask whether support for Israel had become something American conservatives were no longer permitted to examine honestly. Then his voice was taken. But the question wasn't. The end. Woo, I knew exactly what you wanted tonight. A little tome on Israel. That took me 2 freaking days. Give me a like, please. One like. One fucking like. Feel like there's a lot of good stuff there. Oh, I did write something else down. So I'm listening to the debate, and Andrew is increasingly getting confrontational with Candace about, well, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Where's your tangible evidence? Your concrete evidence? Where's the evidence? Candace is like, I've been spending hours and hours and hours explaining my evidence, my thinking. Yeah, but that's just conjecture. That's not really evidence. That's conjecture. Where's your evidence that Israel was murdered or was involved in killing Charlie Kirk? Where is your evidence? Concrete evidence. And I felt terrible for Candace because she was getting flustered and didn't know how to handle this nincompoop. I don't want to call him a nincompoop. Let's be clear. I like this guy. I liked him. I may still like him. I don't hold anything against anyone forever just because they believe something different. I think he's a decent debater, well trained. I like debate. I like arguing. He knows arguing, and I appreciate that. But when he kept pushing that, I was like, why don't you just say this? If Israel was involved in killing Charlie Kirk, do you think that they would make any effort to cover it up? Does the Israeli intelligence agency have the capability to orchestrate an assassination? Have they ever done such before? And if they were to, okay, I was like, I can't read my own writing. And if they were to, what would that look like exactly? That's what I don't understand about these arguments. Well, where's your evidence? But we see Tyler Robinson running across the building, and I mean, we're missing this and we're missing that. And that's what Candace does. She goes through all the different areas where there's holes. And it's easy to see the holes. The biggest holes for me are, how does a modern American university, neck deep in flock cameras, security camera, dude, I have 12 fucking cameras on my house. 12. Nothing happens in or around my house without me seeing, or without me having the ability to see. How is it that they only have one distant, far away camera to see this entire assassination come? Why have I not seen any other surveillance? Sure, there's the one that's Tyler walking through the, quote unquote, Tyler walking through the stairwell. Although, as a guy who wears sunglasses, I know that the reason people wear sunglasses is because that deters facial recognition. You're far less likely to identify somebody when they have sunglasses on. And to me, it doesn't even look like the motherfucker. But whatever. That's not the point. The point is, there should have been more security footage. Point one. Point two, there should have been an incredibly more thorough investigation and retention of evidence and preservation of crime scene than there was. As a matter of fact, within hours, I believe, the ground was dug up and covered in pavers, and everything that was there was removed, but not taken to evidence. The car that Charlie was driven in, like, let's just say, I don't know. I understand the narrative is, oh, this supposedly straight A student, 4.5 GPA, perfect grades, scholarship winner, obviously awkward as fuck and doesn't know how to do anything in his life besides get A's. But did he not have a perfect SAT score or something? How does this guy, who had a rifle, yes, from his grandpa, but does he shoot? Like, I shoot all the time. I shoot competitions. I shoot out to 1,000 yards. I killed an elk at 1,200 yards. And if I was to go out and shoot one shot today, if I was going to sit here and engrave little sayings on my cartridges, well, first off, I'd slap me in the face because that's ridiculous. Just make sure they don't go off. If I was going to do that and then go take one shot to basically commit the greatest political assassination since JFK, if not of all time in American history, And I had it all scoped out, and I knew it was 143. I got to go to the range and make sure that fucking bullet's going to hit where I'm shooting. Because going into that mission, it's suicide. How does he think he's getting away with it? Whoever gets away with shit like that? Unless you're allowed to. I don't know exactly what happened. But a lot of things don't line up. The type of investigation that followed is asinine. The fact that any and every thread needs to be pulled on, and most any and every thread is burned with the lighter, tells you something. Why are you so afraid to look into things? Well, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Do we not think that if Israel killed Charlie Kirk, some might say they had some inkling and hand in the assassination of JFK? One could make that claim. These guys have been around for a long time, and I don't blame them. You know, they've had a long, rough history. And anyone that knows Judaism and Jewish people understands that that is in their blood, and they don't forget it, whether religious or not. They know. We are the outcasts. We are, yes, God's chosen people and blessed by God. But there's only a few of us. And everyone else wants us dead. That's why when they found a friend, a big dumb jock out on the playground, the little Jewish kid comes up to him and says, "Hey, do you want to help me? I have a lot of money. I can give you money if you help me. I can give you anything and everything you want. Will you help me?" Because he can't fight his own fights. He's not big enough. So he gets America, the big dumb jock, and says, "Oh yeah, I'll take some money. I'll beat their ass. Who do you want first?" Iraq? Okay. Don't forget Afghanistan? Okay. How about Lebanon? Sure. Syria? Got it. What about Iran? Oh, hold on now. Hold on now. We've been doing this for long enough. Maybe we should stop. We beat up everybody on the playground. I mean, what else do you want? Yeah, but there's still the big bad Iran. Yeah, but every time I get in a fight, I go to jail. I break my hand. I get cuts. Last time I broke my foot. And it takes forever to recover. It costs me a lot. I know, but if we just take Iran out, everything will be fine. Just go punch him in the face. He will surely roll over and yield. Okay, dumb jock America, let's do it. Or back it up a little and say there's a kid on the playground named Charles Kirkland. We'll say Charles Kirkland. And Charles Kirkland is out on the playground proclaiming that while the big dumb jock has beat up everyone on the playground, and him and his Jewish friend can roam free and are doing well and are thriving, he thinks the undue influence of that jock by the Jewish kid is causing problems. And now they're going to go up against somebody who might just kick both of their asses. And if he kicks both of their asses, then guess what? He owns the playground. And granted, we don't like him. We don't want him to run the playground. But we also wouldn't mind living in fucking peace. And just playing basketball, you know? Instead of fighting. But Charlie was saying, no, let's not do it. And the little Jewish guy's like, hey, who is that? Shut him up. We need to get rid of him. He's changing people's minds. He has the most influence in American conservative politics ever. Charlie freaking Kirk. You don't think Israel was trying to handle him? You don't think Israel watched him come up? You don't think Israel's watching everyone come up? They're watching. I know them. I don't want to tell you how, but. And I'm not necessarily opposed to the thinking that self-preservation is the number one goal here. Like looking at everyone on earth with suspicion because everyone on earth wants them dead. And having been persecuted and killed a lot. But it doesn't make it right for them to do the same. And maybe sometimes I don't mind. What's a little ethnic cleansing? People need to die anyway. They were going to die anyway. But is that what we really want? What we don't want is a collapsed economy. What we don't want is any more opportunity in America to thrive because a foreign country blackmailed, blackballed, and roped us into something we had no business getting into. Now, I don't know what the future holds. But for those of us that voted for Donald Trump in 2024, even those of you that voted in 2016 and 20 for Donald Trump, it doesn't seem right anymore. That motherfucker was out there saying no new wars. We want peace in the Middle East. And I think he's compromised by Israel. Well, if he was compromised, why didn't the Democrats rat him out? Oh, the Democrats aren't in charge. Have you not picked up what we're putting down? Why is it that the Democrats are the most pro-Israel? And now the evangelicals and the right is pro-Israel. Why is everyone pro-Israel in the government, whether you're left or right? Do they really have that much influence? I bet they do. Or at least they have that much blackmail on people, a.k.a. Jeffrey Epstein. There's just too much shit here. There's just too much smoke, and it kind of makes me think there's a fire. Something doesn't smell right. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I hope you enjoyed the history of the Israelites and the Edomites. And is it the case that all these evil Jews come from the Edomites? And they're pretending to be Jews now? And then Jesus in Revelation talks to the church at Smyrna and Philadelphia and tells them, these are Jews that say they're Jews but are not, and they lie. The synagogue of Satan. Would it not stand to reason that Satan himself, who wants to undermine, destroy, kill, and steal God's plan for the earth, wouldn't infiltrate every aspect of everything, including the Roman Church, the Jewish faith, the Jewish leadership? I mean, I kind of feel like The Passion by Mel Gibson kind of displayed the idea of the devil sitting at the side saying, I'm killing him. We're killing him. We're killing him. Never underestimate the devil's ability to infiltrate anything you might think is good. For in the last days there will be many who say, I know you, God, but I say, depart from me, evildoers, I don't know you. Well, I'm glad I got my mic fixed. Sounds way better than it used to. And my headphone. That's cool. Oh, yeah. I'll show you this video. So I'll explain the Taliban. I guess I got to show the video while I explain it. Taliban crickets. That's what I call them. So I'm down in a basement here in the gold mine in southern Colorado. Doing my thing. Teaching people how to grow weed. Bringing up ideas on politics. And even the deeper ideas. Once a month, the last day of the month, join us for On Faith and Doubt, where we go heavy. Last time I couldn't stop freaking, yeah, that was rough. No. That ain't it. So it's got to be that one, yeah. Airdrop. Ba-boom. See how long it takes on this 13-year-old computer? Or no, wait, what year is it? 11-year-old. What time is it? We've been doing about an hour? Okay. There it is. All right, let's have a look at this video. You're going to be glad you stuck around. Oh, just for the record, ladies and gentlemen, this is an airsoft pistola model Colt 1911 A1, but it's not real. It has the orange thing on it. This is my airsoft gun that I assassinate crickets with. Roaches, crickets, any bug, I shoot any bug, except black widows. I soak them in WD-40 and then light them on fire. Just saying. There's different ways to eliminate bugs. But I tell them, I spray the black widow because I'll find them every so often out in the backyard. I'll spray them with the WD-40 and then I'll be like, yeah, how's that feel, bitch? Hey, listen, tell your friends, I don't want you around here. We don't want your kind around here. And then start the lighter, blast the WD-40 as a blowtorch, and burn the shit out of it. Bye. Black Widow. She'll love you. And then she'll eat you. No empathy for the Black Widow. Okay, how can we do this to where it looks... That might work. All right. So, is this the end of the video or the beginning? Let me play it and see where it goes here. Okay, yeah. So, let's pause it there. How can we pause? What you see here is my little workshop in the basement. Right behind the computer, as a matter of fact. And I got that window up there with the window well in it. These old 70s removable windows. These motherfucking Taliban crickets like to get in there and just chirp as loud as can be. It sounds like a freaking bullhorn. And they just don't stop. This particular little asshole, and my wife and I were down there working earlier, and he was just going off. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we have crickets again. It's been 2 years. She's like, oh, that's funny. I didn't even hear him. Well, you hear him now, and he wouldn't fucking stop. And I can't stand it. I've been killing him for years and years and years. So above this dresser, which on top has a lot of powder on it, which, ladies and gentlemen, that is known as kratom leaf. That is a powdered version of a ground up kratom leaf that I take every day. And I have for 8 years, and it's a wonderful miracle substance to input into your body. And anybody that tells you it needs to be outlawed Now, extracts and you start fucking with them, and we forgot how to deal with plants. That's my other channel. We are misusing plants. So don't concentrate them, don't extract them. Just use the plant for what it's meant for. And I think you'll... Anyway, so moving on. On top of that, I usually have a little jar where I put the kratom in. I scoop it out of a bag. And then I put a little tiny scoop and put it into capsules, right? So earlier, this is probably like an hour or two before this, I go in and I pull that window out. And I found that motherfucker. He was right there on the bottom of the windowsill underneath the window. So I took the window out. I saw him. And I was reaching for the gun. And I went to shoot him. And I just clipped him on the back end. And it knocked his ass into that window well, I mean. And he stopped chirping, and I thought I killed him. Then I come back down in an hour, try and work on my paper, and he's going nuts again. I was like, no way. The motherfucker survived? I had shot off his wing and his fucking back leg, I think. But he was still going after it. I think they're in heat, or they're rutting, we'll say. The crickets are rutting. So I go outside, I try and find him, I don't see him. I'm thinking, you know what, I should get a blowtorch and just torch this shit. And then I was like, no, I probably don't want to burn my house down while we're under a fire ban. So I just scared him. I couldn't find him. Couldn't find him anywhere. I thought he was under the windowsill. Yeah, you don't have to do that. I thought he was under the windowsill on the outside. Because I shot him out into the dirt, and I think he ran under there. And he was screaming. But I couldn't find him. But I scared him. So I come back in and keep working, and then he goes off again. It's like, all right, that's it, motherfucker. I'm going. So I go back up, pull the window off, pull the insulation out, all the different things. And I'm looking for him, and I can't find him. I'm leaning over this window and trying to figure out if this little rascal's under the ledge or not. And wouldn't you know it, but all of a sudden he jumps out on the window ledge right next to my shoulder. And I was like, geez. And I literally, out of instinct, I had the gun in my hand and I shot while he was there. And I knocked him into the air off the wall, and he fell into this, which is a square jar, glass jar that holds my empty capsules that I use. So that little shithead fell into that. And I was like, okay. And I looked at him and I was like, this guy is missing a leg and a thing, but he is still plenty alive. So I run over there. I was like, I don't know, what do I do with them? I got down, I went over onto the ground. Let's see. Let's let it play here. You can see the camera and everything. Yeah, so this is me up there trying to find him, and he fucking jumps down on me, scares me. I shoot him, he falls into that thing. And then I think, okay, I'm just going to lean this. He's kind of in the right corner. I was like, I'm just going to lean it down and let him walk out. And as soon as he walks out, I'll shoot him. And wouldn't you freaking know it, but as I was leaning him down, he jumped out. And as soon as he jumped out, I turned and shot. And it was the most beautiful shot of all time. Actually, I have many beautiful shots, but look at this. And then as I was cleaning up, I was like, I got to film this. I don't know if you can see the hole, but it might be under that paper towel, but there's the rest of him. Tell your friends. And the paper towel I got was to clean up his guts that were in the middle of the floor right there. And that's what we do around here. We shoot crickets and we throw them in the trash. And then we say, tell your friends, you're not welcome around here. We don't like crickets. We don't like roaches. We tolerate the spiders, but not black widows. So, are you glad you stuck around? 1 hour. Bye.